Fritz, it's Bob and Tony here in Eastern Connecticut. We appreciate you being on the show.
Hi, Fritz.
Hey, hi guys. How you doing?
We're very good, Fritz, and again, it's an honor to have you on the show. I can't tell you the memories that are brought back for Tony and I, because you're talking to two guys who grew up and cut their teeth on baseball in the 60s and 70s. And
in the New York area.
Wow.
Yeah, we lived in southern Connecticut. Our first trips ever were to see guys like you pitch in the 60s and 70s. My first game was 68. We'll get to this. Where I remember Dooley Womack pitching. That's about all I remember. But
right.
And Fritz, what is funny? I remember pulling up. It was a bus trip. I pulled up to Yankee Stadium. I see this huge building, and what I said to my father as a wide-eyed 8-year-old was, "Dad, I thought they played baseball outside." I'll never forget that. So.
That's unreal.
It is.
What an observation.
But again, for our viewers out there, Fritz Peterson, it's just, again, it's an honor. He pitched for New York, Cleveland, and Texas between 1966 and 76, a left-hander. He has the all-time lowest ERA ever at the old Yankee Stadium, which is incredibly impressive, at 2.52. Again, won 20 games in 1970 for the Yankees. Between 69 and 72, pitched no less than 250 innings each year under the Ralph Houck managed Yankees. And again, we'll get to more of the numbers for Fritz as we go along here. But again, Fritz, it's a privilege to speak with you again. And this is one of those shows, Tony, we will not get to everything we want to talk to him about, but we're going to try to get. We'll be all over the place, Fritz, and we'll see what we can do. But my first question, Fritz, I was looking at your '66 rookie season. Here you are, spring training, 24-year-old kid. Did you ever imagine that you'd end up pitching 215 innings as a rookie in your first year in the major leagues?
No, I didn't think I'd pitch one. It was my goal. Was at the time was just to throw one pitch in one game with a major league team, and of course the Yankees is the only team I consider a major league team. And it was just unreal. And once that pitch was over, about 2 pitches later, Bobby Richardson came in from second base. We were in Baltimore at the time on the 15th of April in 1966, and he says, "Do you hear Mickey yelling out there?" And I said, "No, why?" He said, "He's just telling you to hurry up your pitches because he says they can the outfielders feel better when the game goes along faster." And I said, "Oh, of course." And from then on, I pitched quick. In fact, the quickest games of anybody, I think, in the league for 10 years. And it was all because of Mickey Mantle. And it was a thrill, the whole deal, everything.
What a great story. And we've talked to Yankees in the past, Fritz, and we have to ask everyone the same thing. And I'm sure you remember your first step onto the field at Yankee Stadium, looking out at the monuments.
The real ballpark.
The real
ballpark.
Right. But it must have been. I don't know if you just get overly nervous. If you're in awe, can you perform up to your ability? What was that experience like?
Oh, we got there the night before the season opener, and we got off the bus, went into the clubhouse, put our things in the locker, and it was almost dark. They had some of the lights on. And you mentioned Dooley Womack before. Yeah. Dooley and I were the rookies on the team that year, and we both, not hand in hand, but might as well have been, walked from the dugout to the monuments. And it seemed like 2 miles, and it was just so big and so real and so important that I'll never forget that feeling, and I'm sure Dooley won't either.
Oh yeah, it gave me shivers as an 8-year-old, Tony, when I looked out and saw how green the grass was, etc., and where Ruth and Garrett played. It really is. And as we talk to Fritz on the television screen, our guys in the back will show various clips, a collage of pictures of him throughout his career. One more before I get you over to Tony. Fritz, again, we mentioned those years 68 to 72. I think very underrated years for you just because of playing for the Yankees, some of the guys you were around. You never pitched less, again, than 212 innings during that stretch. You had the best strikeout-to-walk ratio in the AL in 69 and 70. And I read that you also led the league in fewest walks per 9 innings for 5 straight years now. Before that, Cy Young was the last pitcher to do that. I was telling that to Tony before, and it's just mind-boggling. Now, I am a Fordham guy, and of course, Frankie Fritz was the guy that said, "Oh, those bases on balls." Was this something you were keenly aware of, or were you just devoid of wildness the way you pitched?
No, I was aware of it very early. My dad was a stickler for having me throw a ball anywhere when I was playing catch with him, have a target all the time, whether it's his right shoulder or left shoulder or the letters or his belly button or belt or whatever. And it was that was in my mind and in my body and baseball whole career there, that I always had a purpose for every pitch, and it came in handy because the only reason I got that designation as the lowest career ERA in the history of Yankee Stadium was because of the walks. You know, Whitey Ford was, of course, much better of a pitcher than I was, but he walked more than I, and those guys that walk get a way to find a way to come around and score on you. And that's what happened. And in those 5 years I led the league, I didn't even realize it was happening, leading the league or anything. It didn't matter. I just didn't want to get guys on base. And that's what happened, and that's why I ended up #1 in that category.
And that was kind of what we were going to ask you next as far as your key to success at Yankee Stadium, Fritz. Of course, keeping the ball in the ballpark and the spaciousness of the left center to center. That must have helped a lot, too.
Oh, absolutely. I could just get it out there, even if it were belt high, get it on the outside part of the plate, and the best a hitter could do, and most hitters tried to pull the ball, was hit a golf tee shot out to left center field, and one of our speedsters out there would run it down. Mantle to start with, and Roy White and Bobby Mercer, and we had a good outfield to get those kind, and in Yankee Stadium you could do that. And I'd do it and throw it up there, and they'd think it's a bad pitch, and it was, but it was on purpose because I wanted them to tee it off and just be a deep fly ball.
Understand.
Yeah, and yeah, we saw guys make catches out near the monument somehow. It was amazing, Tony, how
I saw Joe Pepitone make a catch where he made a catch by the monuments, and then he turned around and threw to Tom Tresh at shortstop and held the runner. It was amazing. It was the most amazing thing I had ever seen.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And Joe was a fun guy. And in fact, I thought you were going to tell a story about him breaking his arm one day throwing a ball in, which he did.
That one I didn't know.
Yeah, well, Joe was a little bit lazy at times and a wonderful guy, but he wouldn't warm up once in a while, and he got one of those gappers one time, and there was a guy going to attempt to get to third base, and Joe turned hard and threw it and broke his arm. He left the stadium in a sling, and it cost us a few games without him, but that's baseball, that's Joe, that's fun.
Again, for our viewers out there, we're on the line with former MLB pitcher Fritz Peterson. Again, 3.30 career ERA, over 2,200 innings, 90 complete games, Tony, with 20 shutouts. It's incredibly impressive.
What's a complete game? I forget.
Yeah.
That was funny because Andy Pettit, when he was having a perfect game attempt in Baltimore, I was at that game, I think, in 2009. And he got into the inning, the 8th inning, and the third base made an error with 1 out in the 8th. And he then tried to finish the game but couldn't, and they had the game won. But Andy didn't have any that year. And we all the ones we pitched, especially Mel, my arm hurts right now thinking of it.
We'll get to that a little later, too. It's just some impressive numbers. And the majority of your career, Fritz, was played under Ralph Houck. Now, this guy was a former catcher, the Major, right, Tony?
The Major.
They call him. I just remember him when managing Detroit, playing with the pebbles by the side of the dugout all the time. But was he a pitcher's kind of guy, Fritz, or did he leave a lot of that to his pitching coaches during the Yankee years?
He was a player's kind of guy as a Yankee. If you had earned a position on that team, you had it. And no matter if you had 2 or 3 games with an error or really gave up 5 or 6 runs, he'd be back. I mean, he was with you, and you knew it. And over a career, that really lasted, and that really meant something. In fact, that year, Ralph, in 1966, Johnny Keane was the manager for about a couple of weeks. Yes. And so I pitched for him first, and then I pitched the first game when Ralph was back, came back as a manager in 66, and then oddly enough ended up being the starting pitcher for the last game that Ralph managed at the end of 1973. And talk about a guy, man, that guy, everybody would want him to be their dad. Just a wonderful, wonderful man.
That kind of guy. We heard a lot of that from the Detroit guys that play with him. And one more before I pass you, Fritz, Whitey Ford, we already mentioned Whitey Ford, a teammate of yours, your rookie season and part of 67. You were coming in, he was going out. Had to be a major influence in some way.
Oh, he was. And just the way he was, even struggling like that, he was still giving it 100%, even though we didn't know how bad his arm was. But just a nice guy trying to help a rookie left-hander myself come through. I tried his curveball, and I wasn't able to throw it. Nobody could, like Whitey. But just a wonderful man, ready to help at any time. And I loved him and Whitey together. They were really fun. And when they both left, a lot left the stadium.
That's for sure. Yeah. Whitey was one of the last of that era. Tony, question?
Fritz, it's a pleasure. You know, I was thinking, I saw you pitch in August of 1969. You were pitching against the Royals. You did a great job that day. You worked the infield, but I'll tell you what I remember more is Emmett Ashford umpiring third base, and I'm sitting out in right field. I can see the gleam of his cufflinks all the way over.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you, and my friends who are Yankee fans would kill me if I didn't. You were around Mickey down towards the end, and what was Mickey like? I mean, did he really, did he get frustrated? Was he even-tempered? Did he think that I've misplaced my skills, or I've lost them, or I'm just trying to do my best? Tell us what that was like.
No, it was sad. Mickey never gave up 1 inch. And to watch him struggle swinging and be in pain and then trying to run balls out with his knees feeling like toothaches at all times, it was a sad thing. And in fact, when he did retire, we knew he was going to leave after the 68 season. I was actually happy for him because it was so painful, and not winning really hurt him, and there was nothing he could do about it. His skills were sliding a bit, and we weren't winning, and it was a sad time for Mickey. But what a wonderful man and wonderful teammate he was.
And Fritz, Tony and I, before the show, had talked about just how many incredible baseball people you were around. A lot of them were going out when you were coming in. I'm talking Elston Howard and Richardson and Boyer and of course Mantle and Maris. And you know, your Stottlemeyers and Dick Hauser, Tony, back in the day was on those. Gene Michael. These guys went all on to work in the game. And but it's an impressive list. If I named them all, it'd be incredible. But you know, I look at a guy like Mercer, who was a youngster back in that time. Fritz, do you think there was too much pressure after Mantle's days for Mercer? I mean, did you ever think, yeah, he's good, but nobody can ever fill a guy like Mantle's shoes? You think that ever got to Mercer a little bit?
I absolutely do. And I felt sorry for Bobby because Bobby couldn't be Bobby. They wanted him to be Bobby Richardson and Mickey Mantle in one person, and he couldn't be either. And there was always an outside strain on him, even though Bobby was a tremendous player and a great, great friend. That hurt him, trying to have to live up to that legacy.
And one more teammate on the Yankees that I wanted to get your opinion on was Thurman Munson. Again, another young guy. Fritz, we were always told and under the impression, tough as nails, maybe a little curt with people, but you'd want him on your side in the trenches, so to speak. Was he that tough? And of course, we knew how good of a hitter he was.
Yes, he was. In fact, my favorite picture of him is with Carlton Fisk at home plate, where Thurman is looking at him with the best look, like, bring it on, buddy, I'm ready. And it was just, what a great teammate and ball player. I miss him more than anybody, I think, on the Yankees.
Wow, yeah, I could understand why. Again, we're having a lot of fun reminiscing with Fritz Peterson, the old New York Yankee. Tony, question?
You know, and Fritz, back to my friends again. The first thing, maybe not the first thing they said, but the second thing they said is, you know, talk to him about what happened in '73 with the wife swapping. And I said, you know, I'm not going to do that because fellas like Phil Pepe and Maury Allen, who were like guys that Bob and I, you know, really admired, covered it beyond belief. But I do want to ask you one question. Looking back now, going back then, is there something perhaps you would have changed or something you learned from it or something you would have done differently?
Yes, I wouldn't have married my first wife.
Well, that's about all you hey.
Yeah, and actually, I don't mind talking about that, the '73 thing. It actually happened in '72, and it was announced in '73. And it was something none of us intended on doing, but it happened. And I hope they make a movie out of it. Warner Brothers bought the rights, and I guess they're getting closer and closer. Because I hope they tell it the way they told me they would, as a love story, because it really was. My wife and I are married now for 40 years, and we have our own little party every night, just thanking the Lord that we have each other and all our kids. And if it comes out on the big screen, it's going to be fun. I just made sure they had the best-looking one play my wife, my current wife.
Yeah.
But it happened, and our kids got a little bit hurt from it. We thought everybody could come out of it better than they went into it, and that didn't happen. But Mike and Marilyn broke up quickly, but Suzanne and I did not. So for me, that was the best trade, best decision I ever made. It's just I wouldn't advocate it for anybody, nor divorce. But for us, it worked out.
Understood. And I'm just looking down the list of some other teammates of his, Tony, that have appeared on the show, like Swoboda and Bloomberg. And I have to ask you another one, Tony, was Jim Botwin. And I have to ask Fritz about Jim Botwin. Of course, the ball four came out, Fritz, and you went on record of kind of being in his corner. You had a very positive view of Jim, and of course, he was kind of blackballed at the time by anyone in the baseball community. Did you ever feel any backlash because you probably never spoke ill of the man?
Not really, because all the guys really liked me, and I chose at that time not to read the book at the time because I had friends on both sides of it, and I haven't. I've got it home waiting for when I go to the nursing home, but I've heard all about it because Jim was very intelligent and a fun guy to be with. He was a roommate of mine for a while, and I did feel like I owed him a lot because he stuck with me from the day one I met him in spring training of '66 until the day he was traded or sold in 1968, and we call it the day he died. We had our own terms for things like that, like when a guy got released or traded, you know, he died. Well, Jim died in '68, but he took a lot of heat from guys, because some of the stories were taken out of context, and the older guys didn't like Jim, but I sure did, and I feel very fortunate to know him, to have known him. Just a fun guy.
And Fritz, I want to ask you about the 1970 season, because arguably, well, I would think it would probably be your best season. You had a hell of a season in '69, but '70 you hit the 20-win mark and made the All-Star team. You also hit 2 home runs. I read that in the
there you go.
And of course the team did well. You improved 13 games over '69. That '70 season, even though you finished in second, I believe, it must have been a pretty special thing. Tell me what it was like pitching in that All-Star game.
It was scary. I was brought in the 9th inning with a runner on first base to face Willie McCovey. And I didn't know that he had been the MVP of the year before's All-Star game, which would have helped a little bit. But I had him 0-2, and then just got another slider just over the outside part of the plate that he hit for a ground ball base hit past our second baseman. Had he hit it a foot closer to the second baseman, it would have been on a double play, game over. Yeah. Pete Rose would not have run over Ray Fosse. But it was a giant thrill, almost the second best thrill I ever had, being on the same field as the All-Stars, looking at these guys, all of them, Harmon, Gilbert, Kaline, all the way down the line. And then I've relived that thing like 1,000 times, wanting to pull that slider a little more outside to strike Willie McCovey out, but I can't do it.
Yeah, yeah. It's just great that you got that All-Star experience, though. And what a year it was, 2011, 2.9, pitching in 260 innings. That would get you a good contract these days, Tony.
It certainly would.
Yeah, you know what? Guess what it got me?
What did it get
a raise of $5,000 on New Year's Eve that next day. That was kind of a part that I don't like to remember, because I felt like it could have been worth a little bit more.
Yeah, well, again, you were born about 30 years too early, Fritz, but,
right.
We say the same thing. Tony, question.
Right.
And Fritz, as far as you were around at your tail end with the Yankees was the beginning of the Steinbrenner era, and what did you know at the time, and did you know that this man was going to shake up greater Yankeedom as he did later on, but did you have an inkling of that early on?
Not really. He just seemed like a power monger, that he had to be in control. Yeah. And we didn't know him for quite a while into the first and even second year. But I liked what he was doing, and I had a feeling he was going to do something like he did. And that was the beginning of free agency there, where he got Catfish and Reggie and all that. Mm-hmm. And the game was on. He was back. And I really think he did more for the modern Yankees than any player ever did. So to that, I think it was really great having Steinbrenner, and he actually thought I was going to be the comeback player of the year in 1974. So he was actually pulling for me as well.
Speaking of 74, Fritz, April 74, the trade comes down. It's Peterson, Bean, Buskey, and Klein for Chambliss, Tidrow, and Upshaw. That was big at the time, Tony, as you remember.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
Your first thoughts when being told of it, Fritz?
Well, I wasn't told of it until they took us all into the office, all four of us, and Bill Verdon was in there looking a little bit nervous. And the players were kind of angry out there. I can imagine Thurman. He said, "What the hell's this?" Because he had an inkling of what was going on. And we got in there, and we learned Bill, just a kind of an outright honest guy, said, "Got to tell you, you guys have all been traded, and you're going on a plane tomorrow to Cleveland."
Wow.
I said, "Cleveland." I told Gabe Paul I wouldn't go to Cleveland or Philadelphia, and he said, "Don't worry, young man, we wouldn't do that to you." And 2 weeks later, the four of us were in an airplane heading for Cleveland.
The mistake on the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mistake on the lake, and the river was on fire.
And Fritz, you did win 23 games for the Indians, 74-75. 1 year was under Ken Aspromonte and one for Frank Robinson. Now I got to ask you, as far as Frank Robinson as a manager, you know, Tony, we think of Hall of Famers as managers. We think of Ted Williams. Yeah. But was Robinson a good handler of men, or was it another kind of an example of a Ted Williams type managerial situation?
Yeah, I don't think Frank was a great manager, and one of the reasons was he was such a great player that he couldn't relate to normal players, and he expected them to do just a little bit than he could do, and they couldn't even do that because Frank was a star. And it got to him after a while, and he started giving us more rules, regulations that he said he wouldn't do, and I felt sorry for him because he seemed like he was just all alone there, and the people were a little bit hard on him because he wasn't he the first black manager too?
Yes, he was.
Yes.
Yeah, I like Frank. I still would like to see him. I haven't seen him in years and years, but he got his first American League home run off of me. In that game in 1966 that we won 3-2. So I didn't care. We won.
That's true. And again, as we spoke before Fritz came out, we have pictures of Fritz at different stages of his career, and you'll see him in a Cleveland Indians uniform there. Tony, question?
Fritz, this is the most difficult and soul-searching question I'm going to ask you. What's wrong with pitching today? These guys pitch 6 innings. They've got arm trouble. They're doing 45-yard tosses, and you pitched well and long and completed games. What happened?
You know, I think the speed gun had a lot to do with that. And because most starters nowadays try to outspeed the other one. And they've got those things up on the scoreboard that they can peak at 92, 97, 96 miles an hour. And then they have pitch counts, and they do it because I think guys are hurting their arms by trying to throw too hard, as well as taking stuff off of their pitch by trying to overthrow. So I don't know if there's anything wrong with them, but we used to I kind of wish I had the relievers the Yankees have had over the years, because if we didn't go all the way in our day, my day, we didn't get a win. And so we had to do it because we were better than the bullpen people. But it's sad to see that happening, because I do like the DH, though. That's coming up for speaking about a lot this year again. And I like it because I'd like to keep Mickey Mantle around a couple extra years rather than see Tom Seaver strike out or whatever it is a number of times. So I like that one. I know you didn't ask the question and don't care, but that's just a little extra.
Yeah, and some of Fritz's teammates, Tony, in Cleveland, that you may recognize: Boog Powell, George Hendrick, Rico Carty, Eckersley, Dennis Eckersley,
young Dennis Eckersley,
and Gaylord Perry, who also he would pitch. Fritz would pitch with in Texas, which brings me to that '76 trade. You go to Texas. You're 34 years old, Fritz. Did you have the feeling at that time that maybe your major league days were dwindling? You did pitch 15 innings to a 3.6 ERA under Frank Lucchesi.
Yeah, I think I had died at that time because I didn't like going to the Rangers. I liked it because John Ellis was there, but going there was like playing sandlot ball again against big leaguers. And it just wasn't fun. I didn't feel like a part of the team. I did feel a part of the Cleveland Indian team, but even that was a downer after coming from the Yankees, which was the team. So down and out, it wasn't a good feeling.
And you know, some of the teammates, again, Texas, you had the Blyleven, Tony, Jeff Burrows, Jim Sundberg, considered a very, very good defensive catcher. But and did you have any major arm problems, Fritz? I mean, we mentioned that well over 1,000 innings pitched from 69 to 72. Looking back, do you think that kind of workload maybe took its toll shortly after you reached the age of 30?
It's possible.
Yeah.
And I pulled a muscle one time in Yankee Stadium, and that was the start of my potential rotator cuff operation. And I could tell because after that, I pulled that groin muscle, my stride changed, and I would start to wear out the shoe plate that we used to have on shoes from more of the ball of the foot to the front of my foot. So I know I was throwing differently, and I think that started my shoulder problem. And once that happened, which was on June 19th, 1976, that was it. And it was a sad feeling, but more of a sad feeling leaving New York and Yankee Stadium.
Yeah. And as we wind up things with Fritz Peterson, Tony, question?
And Fritz, you know, one of the pictures, and you can't see it tonight, but you will see it later, on our montage is a very nice picture of you standing shoulder to shoulder with Joe DiMaggio. And did you spend a lot of time around Joe? Can you tell us what that was like?
No, nobody did. Joe was a different kind of guy. Very hard to get to know, and I couldn't know him because he just came in on old timers days and stuff, and it was neat. I'm glad he took that picture. He even signed a Bible for my son, and but he was a tough guy. You know, all business, and even the guys he played with weren't really his friends. I remember seeing at an old timers game, Hank Bauer go up to Joe, who had a special seat there in the clubhouse, and ask him to sign a ball, and Joe said, "No, I've got better things to do." And right behind Hank Bauer was Moose Skowron with a baseball also. And when Moose saw that, he turned right away and went to his locker. Joe, in all his greatness, was not a very nice guy, I hate to say.
Yeah. Well, we've read a lot about that, Tony, over the years in various books and everything. But last question.
Hey, could I?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to ask you if you could mention something about the book that I just did when the Yankees were on the Fritz.
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all,
we've been seeing the previews.
We wanted to mention that your first book, Fritz, Mickey Mantle's Going to Heaven, which Maury Allen said that book was even better than Ball 4, so that's pretty high praise. But yeah, go ahead. Tell us about the new one.
No, this one's a real one.
Yeah.
The Mickey Mantle book, I just wanted to vent and get some things out of my mind, off my mind, in case I died, because I had a chance of dying that particular year with prostate cancer. Okay. And thank goodness my body accepts hormone therapy, so I didn't die. But I thought I might, and I wanted to get something out in a hurry to... in fact, some of the stuff wasn't real flattering about Maury, which I hate to say.
Yeah.
But that book was okay, and the next book was okay, the one about the art of deconditioning. But this one, when the Yankees were on the Fritz, is a good one, I must say myself. It almost started out to be called Mel and I, but I got Marty
Appel?
Marty Appel, yeah. Marty is the one who convinced me to use the name When the Yankees Were on the Fritz. He thought that would be a good title, so I did it. He helped me with it, and I think it's a real one, and it shows really why we couldn't have won the pennant in those years, and it says a lot of things about a lot of the players that were meaningful to me, and big ones and little ones and whatever. But I do think it's worth reading. It's on it's on an e-book format and also a print version. And I don't think it would be a waste of time, especially for a Yankee fan. But thanks for letting me get that out.
No, we'll definitely plug it, and I'll put a plug in my next sports column. Fritz, you've been very, very, very generous with your time.
We really had fun.
And our time is about up.
Thanks, guys.
That was just one of the quickest half hours I've ever seen, and we figured it would be. But again, we'd love to keep in touch, and we've probably got another 1,000 questions we could ask, perhaps later on in the baseball season or down the road. We'd love to speak with you again.
And we
Get them ready. I'd love to speak to you guys for 2 hours.
Oh, well.
And we hope the movie comes out to something that you really like and really tells the tale. Yeah,
I really do, too. My wife is against it, because she's always stayed away from that situation and talking about it or anything. But I don't mind it. I like it, and I hope it comes out the way that Warner said it was going to, and I really trust that it will.
We hope so, and please keep us posted, Fritz, to anything. I will be in touch with you. And again, we can't thank you enough, and hope to speak with you down the line, and our best to your family.
Hey, thank you very much. It was really fun, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Fritz. Take care now.